I gotta admit, the end of the Fever Mercury game made me sit up for a second because it got a little spicy with Caitlin Clark having an interaction with DeWanna Bonner out on the middle of the floor, sort of waving her back to the bench.
Did Dana Bonner just hand Caitlin Clark another career-defining moment? For free? One animated exchange, one dismissive wave. And suddenly, a regular season matchup got buried under a tidal wave of reactions, hot takes, and memes. What started as a veteran trying to set the tone turned into a viral lesson in who actually controls the spotlight. By the time the arena emptied, nobody cared about Phoenix's balanced box score or Indiana's late-game wobble. All anyone replayed was that micro scene, Bonner stepping up, Clark staying cool, and the internet doing the rest. But how did a 5-second exchange hijack the entire night? The timing tells the story.
Now, we all know that the Indiana Fever is trying to make a push for the playoffs. We've been getting mixed signals coming out about Caitlin coming back, about Caitlin being, somewhat ready to go. Then we got Stephanie White saying it's day-to-day again, basically. Well, I'm here to tell you, Caitlin Clark is not shying away from making headlines.
There was no slow build. Bonner took a step, squared her shoulders, and let Clark know she wasn't impressed. Clark didn't match the energy. She redirected it. Eyes steady. Expression flat. The now famous palm out, go yap somewhere else signal. Not loud, not theatrical, just surgical. The arena reacted like it had seen a buzzer beater. Cameras lunged, timelines detonated. In one cutaway, the veteran looked inflamed. In the next, the second-year superstar looked like she'd swatted a mosquito. That contrast, effort versus ease, is why the clip traveled. But the spark landed on dry brush because the Fever were already walking through heat.
At this point in time. But that interaction stood out to me for a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, obviously, is the history there, where DeWanna Bonner was on the Fever for a cup of coffee and then winds up on the Mercury. Before the season, Caitlin Clark said she wanted to win a ring for her, right? She said, I want to win for her. And Caitlin Clark went out of her way to also, shine light on how DeWanna Bonner had risen up to the top of, near the top of the all-time WNBA scoring ranks. And then,
Indiana came in tight, lingering injuries, rotations in flux, endless day-to-day updates that said everything and nothing. Fans parsing crumbs about ankles, groins, minutes, game time decisions. In that climate, tension didn't need fuel. It needed a match. Bonner obliged. Instead of projecting veteran composure, she became the distraction her team didn't need, and Clark didn't mind. Phoenix may have won the scoreboard, but the scoreboard didn't win the conversation. The moment Bonner initiated, the story slipped out of her hands and into Clark's ecosystem. Cameras, clips, captions, and a fan base primed to amplify. And then the exchange itself played out like a perfectly timed comedy beat.
To the right, behind the coach, coming out and jawing at DeWanna Bonner.
Freeze the frame. Bonner barking, posture high. Clark, calm as a metronome, flicking the talk to the hand like she was clearing a notification. The officials stood like lawn ornaments. No whistle, no warning, just silence that made the theater louder. Fans erupted with a familiar chorus. How does she get hammered and get nothing? How do phantom travels appear while headshots disappear? Whether fair or not, the no-call optics poured gasoline on the narrative. Within minutes, the clip sprinted across X, IG, TikTok. Fever fans called it predictable. Clark loyalists called it textbook. Even some Mercury fans asked the question out loud. Why pick that fight at that moment with that player? Because this wasn't an isolated scuffle. It's part of a league pattern that keeps backfiring.
One of the most clutchest players on the damn team. I'm not just saying that just to say it. Lexi Hall stand on business when it's time to play.
We've seen versions of this movie. Veterans test the league's lightning rod. Sometimes it's body-up defense, sometimes a hard swipe, sometimes jawing after the whistle. It rarely works. Clark doesn't escalate, she reframes. The more force she faces, the more effortless she appears. And effortless translates to viral. Meanwhile, Phoenix lives between eras, legends with history and a window narrowing by the week. While Indiana is stacking a core, Clark, Aaliyah, Boston, Lexi Hull, that screams tomorrow. That tension, past authority versus future gravity, keeps producing these flashpoints. And every time the teach her a lesson script resurfaces, the internet grades the test, and the teacher fails. Funny thing is, while the drama hijacked headlines, a different Fever player quietly carried the night, opened the box score, 35 minutes, 18 points. Defensive trips where Phoenix suddenly ran out of angles. Hull didn't chirp, didn't grandstand, she just stacked winning possessions. Hit a wing jumper, switched onto a hot hand, cut baseline at the perfect second. If you watched with the sound off, you'd think the broadcast forgot she existed, because drama eats oxygen. Yet possession by possession, she was the problem Phoenix struggled to solve. That's the irony. While Bonner tried to rattle Clark, Hull was quietly tightening screws everywhere else. If anyone deserved the headline for impact, it was Lexi. But impact gets diluted when your structures keep leaking, and that points at the bench. Stephanie White's balance beam has looked shaky. Lineups that feel improvised, coverages that fray after the first action, and injury updates that leave fans decoding riddles. Supporters don't demand perfection, they demand coherence. If 5 Mercury players stroll into double figures, that's not a hot hand, that's a structural problem. And yet Clark didn't need a 30 ball to tilt the night. She simply stood there, refused the bait, and let the world do the math. That's how narrative gravity works. You either manage it, or it manages you. Indiana has to decide which side of that equation it wants to live on. Meanwhile, outside the film room, the crowd took matters into its own hands. The Fever community doesn't just react, it organizes. Within minutes, the clip spawned captions, side-by-side angles, slow-mo breakdowns, and meme formats that require zero basketball IQ to understand. That's a superpower, converting nuance into a punchline that travels. And Clark knows how to play within that physics. She doesn't shout, she shrugs. She doesn't lunge, she pivots. She lets the cameras reward restraint because restraint looks like control, and control looks like stardom. Bonner's 19? Vanished in the shadow of a hand wave. That's not fair, maybe. It's just how attention works in 2025. Which leads to the uncomfortable truth for every veteran contemplating a message game. If your plan is rattle the star, understand the risk profile. If she wobbles, you get a footnote. If she doesn't, you become the poster. Clark thrives on slights, real, embellished, or imagined. The more you posture, the more she minimizes, and the algorithm picks a winner. That's why these micro battles keep ending the same way. A veteran looks fiery, Clark looks unbothered, the clip trends, and the scoreboard becomes trivia. For the league, it's a paradox. Everyone says they want the basketball discussed, sets, reads, coverages, yet the content that explodes is ego management and micro-expressions. Until teams adapt to the attention economy, moments like this will keep repeating, with the same main character and the same supporting cast. Dana Bonner didn't just lose a temper check, she lost narrative control. The standings won't archive that. The internet already did. Clark walked away with one more brick in the wall she's building, not from a deep three or a no-look dime, but from a hand gesture that said, "Not today." That's influence. That's leverage. And it's why trying to humble her tends to age badly. If veterans want the conversation to shift, they'll have to change tactics, defend without the theater, beat Indiana with structure, and stop donating highlight fodder to Clark's brand. Until then, the cycle continues. Someone steps up, Clark steps aside, and the clip writes the headline. Was this just harmless friction, or did Bonner gift Clark another chapter in a story no one else gets to edit? Tell me where you land, and if you've got receipts you think I missed, drop them. We'll break them down in the next upload.